Hi everyone, I'm Any New Province, and Guilds of Ravnica is finally upon us. Like many of you, I was already excited that we were returning to Ravnica because I knew that meant we were going to get a bunch of new cool multicolored commons. Now that we have the full set in our hands, I know that we have a lot more than just gold cards to get hyped about. All of GRN's flagship mechanics were printed on commons, which means Pauper players are going to have the opportunity to explore each one by complementing them with partners from our massive card pool. Jumpstart and Undergrowth? Sure, we'd love the Graveyard. Mentor? Yep, we like attacking too. Convoke? Well, it's nothing new, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't take a look at another way to break it. Speaking of breaking new cards, here are my top 5 commons that I expect to be making an impact in the Pauper metagame during the Guilds of Ravnica season. Number 5, Hypothesizzle. Hypothesizzle costs 3 blue-red to draw 2 cards. Then you may discard a non-land card. When you do, Hypothesizzle deals 4 damage to target creature. You can do all of this at instant speed. I think to understand this jam-packed card, we should compare it to some of the spells it may join topping the curve in the Pauper metagame. Mulldrifter is by far our most popular 5-drop, or at least our most popular 5-mana spell that anyone expects to pay full retail for. Here's looking at you, Gush. In some games, Mulldrifter and Hypothesizzle are going to serve a similar purpose. Your Drifter comes down, draws you 2 cards, and then trades with a Delver of Secrets. The only difference here is that Hypothesizzle puts you down an extra card for its removal effect. Why? Because Hypothesizzle can be cast at instant speed, allowing you to wait through your opponent's next turn to gather information before committing your draw to. There's another card that Pauper players seem to enjoy paying a lot of mana for that we can compare to Hypothesizzle. No, not you, Denrova Horror. It draws you 2 cards, acts at instant speed, and for a bit of added cost can immediately become a removal spell. Have you figured it out? Of course we're talking about Mystical Teachings. This powerful tutor costs a lot more than Hypothesizzle when it's drawing you that second card, but it's always drawing you exactly the cards you're looking for. If you have an extra mana to cast that Disfigure right away, Mystical Teachings begins to look a lot like Hypothesizzle. 5 mana, a creature died, and you're ultimately up 1 card for the future. That is, the second card you'll tutor out with Mystical Teachings. It's never easy to make a 5-drop work in Pauper, but Hypothesizzle is a great way to recoup the tempo you'll inevitably lose trying to survive until turn 5. Number 4, the Guild Locket Cycle. I'm actually cheating a little bit on this one because the Locket Cycle is actually a series of cards, 1 locket for each guild that's represented in Guilds of Ravnica. Still, they're all templated in the same way, and I believe they would serve a similar purpose. Let's take the Selesnya Locket for example. It costs 3 mana for an artifact that you can tap for green or white, but you can also pay 4 hybrid Selesnya mana to sacrifice Selesnya Locket and draw 2 cards. First, we'll take a look at the decks that are already running mana rocks in Pauper. Urzatron decks are known to run 1 or 2 signets of the Simic or Dimir variety. This deck needs more colored sources like the signets because most of its lands only produce colorless mana. We can find another popular Pauper mana rock in Pristine Talisman. Those slow decks that are content watching you mill out use Pristine Talisman to buffer their life total as they kill your creatures and eventually, like way in the future, eventually kill you. While the guild lockets are more expensive than signets and don't buffer your life total like Talisman, they do provide you something not all colors can easily gain access to. These lockets represent the fabled card advantage, albeit very expensive card advantage. This is exciting for any deck that can incidentally use the extra mana, like a green deck just looking to land a Fangren Marauder before gaining some extra life by cracking their Selesnya Locket. What I'm most excited about though is what these lockets represent for slower mono red decks. It's okay that you've never heard of them because frankly they don't exist. Mono red is notoriously bad at generating card advantage, and these lockets are the first glimmer of hope that it will be able to escape its hellbent heritage. Number 3, Rhizome Lurcher. Rhizome Lurcher is a fungus zombie that costs 2 black-green for a 2/2 with the Undergrowth ability. What that means is Rhizome Lurcher enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the number of creatures in your graveyard. Getting creatures into the graveyard to enhance Rhizome Lurcher is something that cards of common rarity excel at. Grizzly Salvage and Grapple with the Past both help to select our lurchers from the top of our deck and also dump great fodder into the undergrowth for them. If your self-mill goes well, Rhizome Lurcher will hit the battlefield as a massive threat. Speaking of massive threats, Rhizome Lurcher shares a relevant creature type and color with a threat I'm sure it will be sharing screen time with. Gurmag Angler, Gurm Daddy, the Gurm Father, like Rhizome Lurcher, is a black zombie. This is insurance against some popular removal that would foil your plans of winning with a massive targetable threat. Anyone packing Snuff Out, Doomblade, or the mono black control exclusive Victim of Night will be sorely mistaken when trying to take care of your enormous zombie arsenal. The only question that remains is how fast will our Rhizome Lurcher decks be? Are we looking to pressure our opponent early with Putrid Leeches, eschewing our life total in hopes that it will become obsolete? Or will we turn our graveyard into a source of card advantage and selection by reaching into it for a Rhizome Lurcher with a tortured existence when the time is right to end the game? Whatever the pace of play, I know I'll be hunting through my hand for an answer whenever my opponent plays one of these. Number 2. Portcullis Vine. Portcullis Vine costs 1 green mana for an 0/3 plant wall defender creature with the ability pay 2 generic mana, tap Portcullis Vine, sacrifice a creature with defender, draw a card. This defender is pretty innocuous. After all, a 1 mana 0/3 is anything but exciting. What puts Portcullis Vine over the top is that it has one of the most powerful phrases in all of Magic the Gathering tacked onto it. It says, draw a card. This defensive engine slots effortlessly into wall combo strategy, similar to the one that top-aided a large Italian tournament recently. These decks are attempting to generate massive amounts of mana with things like Axebane Guardian to either go infinite with Freed from the Real or generate an enormous enough Rolling Thunder to end the game. Portcullis Vine can keep the deck digging for combo pieces while sacrificing walls who've blocked or are targeted by opposing removal spells. If being welcomed into a deck lovingly known as Wonder Walls wasn't enough, Portcullis Vine also has a perfect partner if it would like to fit into any other kind of strategy. Wall of Kelp represents a continuous way to draw at least 1 extra card each turn. We've jumped through hoops for Howling Mines before, and it's paid off splendidly. Now, I'm not suggesting it's a great idea to replace your Palace Sentinels with Portcullis Vines and Wall of Kelp, but you know I'll at least be trying it. Number 1. Mephitic Vapors. Mephitic Vapors costs 2 and a black for a sorcery that gives all creatures -1/-1 until end of turn, and it lets you surveil too. That means you look at the top 2 cards of your library, then put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest on top of your library in any order. Ah yes, Pauper, a wrathless format that succeeds in being one of the most hostile possible ecosystems towards X1s. Every deck packs some variety of electrickery to check any opponent who is audacious enough to go wide with tokens. If their second color provides no greater option, white mages will even play Holy Light if their deck demands it. Black has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to this effect, so Mephitic Vapors has a lot to live up to. Most black decks will at least run Nausea in their sideboard, while others opt to continuously harass the one toughness with cards like Pestilence. I think Mephitic Vapors competes most against the former, and it has everything to do with this Wrath's Surveil ability. Surveil is worlds better than Scry in the Pauper format for a number of reasons. If you're running the aforementioned Gurmag Angler, then Surveil is ramp. Wrath the board of X1s to hit my 5/5 early? Yes please. More than that, Surveil allows decks to dump cards that may be too expensive to currently cast from their hand, like Battle Screech or Deep Analysis. It's alright to surveil them away. They'll be in the graveyard to use when the time is right. While Mephitic Vapors may only shake Nausea from its established sideboard slot, I'm still excited to see what it can do for black decks in game 2 and 3. And there you have it, my top 5 commons from Guilds of Ravnica for the Pauper format. It was really hard to narrow down all of the sweet potential Pauper playables in this set, and I know I missed some of your favorites. Make sure you leave a comment down below telling me what your top 5 commons from Guilds of Ravnica are for the Pauper format. While you're down there, if you wouldn't mind liking the video and subscribing to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. While I do think my top 5 are the most likely cards to make an impact on the Pauper metagame, I still think there are some spells that are worth talking about, so here are my honorable mentions for the Guilds of Ravnica commons. First, we have Hunted Witness and Healer's Hawk. Inexpensive white creatures, and especially those with a bit of extra value, have had a habit of popping up in Pauper decks. For that reason, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Healer's Hawk and Hunted Witness show up in 75s this season. While we already have access to Doomed Traveler, which has a similar effect to Hunted Witness, I could see the 8th copy of these interesting token producers allowing for some interesting build-arounds. A lot of Golgari Aristocrats' power comes from Young Wolf and Brindleshote's ability to leave behind a body even after they've been dismissed to the bin for the first time. With the release of Hunted Witness, we could be approaching a critical mass of these abilities in Orzhov's neck of the woods. I think it may be time to examine what white can do for aristocrats that green can't. Healer's Hawk, on the other hand, may not replace itself after it dies, but it is going all in on the first time around. Healer's Hawk costs 1 white mana for a 1/1 bird with flying and lifelink. While mono green is guiding Vault Scourges with elephants, Healer's Hawk could allow for the 8th inexpensive and easy to cast 1-drop for white-based decks. I know Pauper players love to have their birds wield Bone Splitters, and I think this pigeon could carry one fantastically. Next, we've got Gravid Ik Punch. I achieved peak Johnny as I unpacked the full Guilds of Ravnica spoiler and discovered this low-flying gem. Gravid Ik Punch costs 3 and a red for a sorcery that allows you to cause target creature you control to deal damage equal to its power to target player. It also has the Jumpstart ability, which means you can cast Gravid Ik Punch from your graveyard by discarding a card in addition to paying its other costs, then exile it. What has me so excited about this spell is that it looks a little bit like Fling and a little bit like Soulsfire, but comes back around for another swing from your graveyard. You won't have to go all in, sacking all of your artifacts and your ATOG for this one. Also, your opponent may have a counterspell for the one of Soulsfire in your combo deck, but with this new common, you can just Gravid Ik roll with the punches by casting it a second time from your graveyard. This is a finisher that pays Pauper players off in a completely new way, and I can't wait to explore it. Finally, we have Whisper Agent and Notion Rain. Both of these cards would be very unexciting if it weren't for the surveil mechanic, and that's largely why they haven't made the top 5. I'm sure it's hard for any of us to say how good surveil truly can be. Take Whisper Agent for example. Whisper Agent costs 1 and 2 hybrid Dimir mana for a 3/2 human rogue with flash. When it enters the battlefield, you surveil 1. We can immediately compare this to Hired Blade from M19, a flash creature with the same stats. Don't worry, I saved you the trouble and tried Hired Blade for myself. The surveil on Whisper Agent's body and its color flexibility is really going to have to push it over the edge for this card to fly. If and when we find out these attributes do make the difference, I think it's time to start looking at our Phyrexian Ragers and Seagate Oracles. Decks that play these cards usually have an empty opposing board and an opponent with a juicy life total for that extra point of power. Notion Rain would take considerable less convincing. Notion Rain costs 1 blue-black for a sorcery that lets you surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. After that, Notion Rain deals 2 damage to you. The closest we have to Notion Rain is Read the Bones, and I'm ready to commit to this. Surveil is definitely better than Scry. That mostly leaves us to discuss Notion Rain's restrictive mana cost. Consult the Necrosages has seen a number of Pauper tournament placements, but has 2 fairly powerful modular abilities. Is Notion Rain more powerful enough than Read the Bones to see slots in decks that don't mind adding blue for options like they will for Consult the Necrosages? And there you have it. I think I've touched on all the commons that I can't wait to play with this Guilds of Ravnica season. You can find deck techs for brand new decks built around these cards right here on my YouTube channel. Those deck techs go up every Sunday night, and footage from a league run with that deck will go up every Wednesday. What will you do while you wait for the league footage to be uploaded? Well, watch it live, of course. We play the decks live at twitch.tv/AnyNewProvince every Monday and Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Atlantic time. Thank you so much for tuning in and checking out what I think are the top 5 cards from Guilds of Ravnica for the Pauper format. I really hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you on Monday and Tuesday night.